Oh, but then the packaging supplier ghosts them out of nowhere because one of their suppliers shut down. There are now companies popping up to help map supply chains, or at least supply intelligence and data. A startup called Project 44 was just valued at $2.4 billion. Interos, which uses AI to model supply chains, is valued at more than $1 billion. And in general, companies are just paying more attention to where they are in the supply web. And what this all means is that maybe in a few years, when the pandemic is behind us, we might have much better supply chains. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore for Marketplace.
We are the people who make supply chains interesting. The Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. The Move Over Law protects police, fire, EMS, utility, and sanitation personnel by requiring drivers to move over and slow down for their vehicles.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
She says Governor DeSantis is not fit to serve. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, we speak with State Agriculture Commissioner and candidate for governor Nikki Fried about her campaign to oust Ron DeSantis. That's ahead. Then later,
I think the pandemic had a lot to do with how real estate has really gone crazy, in good, in some ways bad as well.
why Florida's real estate market is so hot and when it might cool off. Plus, UNF celebrates its 50th anniversary. All of that and more, just ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The top Republican in the House has turned down an invitation to testify before a Democratic-led committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports the panel has not ruled out a subpoena for Kevin McCarthy to try to force his cooperation.
Most Republicans have boycotted the committee's efforts, but Chairman Benny Thompson said McCarthy has given public statements taking aim at former President Trump that would be significant for the committee's ultimate report about the attack.
If he'd come before us, he can share some of that voluntarily. I think it's important.
But in a statement, McCarthy said the panel's work was illegitimate, pointing at Democrats' rejection to add his Republican appointees to the panel. McCarthy said he has nothing else to add to public statements he has already shared about January 6th and claims any private conversations are not tied to the day's violence. Claudia Grisales, NPR News, Washington.
A new report by the group Human Rights Watch says Iran has continued its poor human rights record, responding to protests with sometimes lethal force and mismanaging its response to the coronavirus pandemic. NPR's Peter Kenyon reports the organization examined nearly 100 countries.
The latest world report from Human Rights Watch says Iranian security forces engaged in violent crackdowns against peaceful protests over mostly economic issues and jailed activists who tried to complain about Tehran's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The report notes U.S. sanctions as one of the causes of Iranians' economic hardships, but says mismanagement also played a role.
That's NPR's Peter Kenyon reporting. College enrollment numbers for the fall show more than 1 million high school graduates are not going to college compared with pre-pandemic numbers. NPR's Alyssa Nadworny reports it's the largest two-year decrease in more than 50 years.
Overall, undergraduate enrollment is down 6.6% since the fall of 2019, according to research from the National Student Clearinghouse. Community colleges have been hardest hit, down 13% over the course of the pandemic. Despite hope that students just needed some time off and would re-enroll, the pandemic gap year turned out to be a myth. Of the 2020 high school graduates who chose not to enroll in college after graduation, only 2% ended up enrolling last fall. The biggest reason? Many would-be students would rather work. Wages at the bottom of the economy have gone way up. For example, government data show non-manager jobs in hospitality now pay 15% more than a year ago. Alyssa Nadworny, NPR News.
Stocks across Asia traded mixed today. On Wall Street, Dow futures are trading higher. This is NPR News in Washington.
And your time is now 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Legislation that would make it easier for Florida businesses and individuals to challenge local ordinances cleared its first state Senate test yesterday. The measure, approved by a Senate committee, would make cities and counties come up with a business impact statement on a proposed ordinance. An ordinance challenged by a lawsuit could be suspended, and should the lawsuit prevail, the government would have to pay the attorney's fees. Supporters of the legislation are calling it a needed check on government heavy-handedness. Starting next month, Universal Orlando employees will be required to be fully vaccinated or tested weekly, an effort to protect employees and guests from COVID-19. Brendan Byrne reports.
The policy change affects just team members, and starting February 9th will require them to be fully vaccinated or tested every 7 days. In a statement, Universal Orlando says the new policy is an effort to comply with federally mandated OSHA regulations. The theme park and resort operator says it will initially provide free testing on site for team members. Back in November, Disney paused its vaccination mandate for employees after Governor Ron DeSantis signed a package of bills into law banning businesses from enforcing such mandates. Universal Orlando says it will monitor legal action involving these regulations and adapt its policy accordingly. I'm Brendan Byrne in Orlando.
In Brunswick, Georgia, right now, it's 47 degrees. A high near 67 this afternoon for northeast Florida with a light and variable wind. Mid-40s overnight, mid-60s again on Friday.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include iDrive with Remote PC, providing remote access to PCs, Macs, and servers from anywhere, assisting those working from home, and also enabling remote assistance for customers at remotepc.com.
One of the governor's potential opponents says he isn't fit to serve. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead this hour, a conversation with Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried on her campaign to unseat Governor Ron DeSantis. What are your questions? Give us a call. It's 549-2937. Then later, why Jacksonville is one of the hottest real estate markets in America right now, and when things might cool off. All of that and much more ahead. But first this morning, let's take the calendar back just a couple of days. On Tuesday, Governor Ron DeSantis opened the state legislative session in Tallahassee with a speech touting what he says are the benefits of living in a free state.
Florida has stood strong as the rock of freedom, and it is upon this rock that we must build Florida's future.
DeSantis says he will not change course on his legislative priorities as he heads into the final year of his first term as governor. But the Democrats vying to replace him say his policies have failed the state. One of them is Nikki Fried, Florida's only elected statewide Democrat, candidate for governor, and the current Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Nikki Fried joins us now in studio to talk about the race. Nikki Fried, thanks for coming back to Studio 5. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here again today, Melissa.
We are slowly but surely bringing guests back into the studio, so it's good to have that. And folks, what are your questions for Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried about her race for governor? It's 549-2937. Give us a call, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Already getting your tweets? Send them to @MelissaInJax. Our Facebook page always open. Nikki Fried, Governor DeSantis opened up the legislative session Tuesday with the traditional State of the State address. He's saying Florida is strong and that this is the free state of Florida. Polls show a majority of Florida voters like the way he's running the state. So then what's your message to those who will have a choice on the ballot? Why should they choose someone else?
Well, first of all, I had to sit through that speech on Tuesday. And as he's talking about a free state, things that come to my mind are how much political theater that was. Look, right here in Jacksonville last week, Ben Frazier was arrested. That's not freedom. All of last year and even
local activist at his press conference.
Yes, exactly. And then this year and last year going after school board members for trying to do what's right. That's not freedom. And going after our local businesses, telling them what they can and cannot do. That's not freedom. And then unfortunately, day one of our legislative session, filing a bill to ban abortion. That's not freedom. And so I ask,
the governor says he'll sign that bill, by the way. It wouldn't ban it, but it would restrict it to 15 weeks of pregnancy.
Yeah, and in a lot of respects, that's a ban. For individuals and for women who may not know that they're pregnant until later on, to women who may not be able to afford to go someplace else out of state, who don't have access to the same kind of health care, that's a ban. And that is a taking away a woman's freedom to decide what is best for her own body. And so we go through all these issues, and what my greatest disappointment is, he had this opportunity to have a state of the state where he inspires our state, brings people together. We have so much divisiveness right now in our state. And he didn't take that opportunity to talk about the issues that everyday Floridians are discussing. That's the increase in rent, the increase of property insurances and property taxes, the increase of food and everyday living. And those were not the issues that were the priorities of this governor. Instead, he continued to throw red meat at his base, continue going after the White House and the federal government, instead of looking at what is happening here on the ground in our state. So I am disappointed that the governor didn't take this opportunity to lead and to bring our state together in a time when there is so much divisiveness.
You went further the other day than just saying the governor's divisive. You said the governor is not fit to serve. Right before the new year, you alleged that nearly 1 million COVID test kits were sitting unused in Florida and that they had expired. At first, the DeSantis administration laughed off that accusation. Eventually, though, it was discovered that there were unused tests sitting in a stockpile that could have been distributed at the same time as Floridians were waiting in hours to be tested. And so if you were elected governor, how would you have handled this pandemic differently? And how will you handle these kinds of public health issues going forward?
I've said this very clearly. When you have a crisis of this magnitude, where it impacts people all across our state, there's not a single individual in our state that has not been impacted by COVID, whether they've been sick or they've lost family members or they've lost their jobs or it's been impacted, in their work environment. And instead of keeping everybody calm, having transparency, telling the truth of what is happening, making sure that numbers were being disclosed, making sure people had access to testing and to vaccines, that's how you lead. You lead by making sure you make everybody feel that you have got this under control. And instead, our governor went around and yelled at the media, yelled at people who were trying to do what's right in their local communities. He took away power from our local governments, power away from our business community. And instead, I've been very clear. It is my job to give people information. Do I have all the answers? Of course not. The doctors and the health experts don't have all the answers. But be honest with the people and tell them, look, this is the best we've got right now. We know that are masks foolproof? Of course not. But it's a tool. And so are the vaccines, and so are the treatments, and so is social distancing and doing the things that we have to do to make ourselves feel safe. And my concern with last year was this. First of all, the governor went MIA for almost 2 weeks when Floridians were waiting in lines 4-5 hours, away from their families, away from their jobs, that they had to sit in these lines and potentially lose their jobs if they weren't back at work. And he was gone. And then we had to step up once again and show leadership, calling local county and city commissioners, calling our local health departments, trying to figure out what was happening on the ground, calling the White House, making sure that we were up to date because he was missing those briefings. And so how we can help. And in those conversations is when we uncovered the 1 million tests. And I had already written beforehand to the governor and asked him.
Who told you? Who told you they were sitting there unused? How'd you find that out?
It was a very high-profiled individual inside the DeSantis administration who.
Why'd they leak that to you?
Because they were concerned. And it was somebody who wanted to make sure that information was going out. But obviously, I want to protect that individual because I know that this governor would have him fired, or them fired almost instantaneously. And so I will protect that person's anonymity. But this person was very clear what was happening. And even before I found that information, I had sent a letter to the governor asking him to reopen testing sites across our state because he had closed down all of our state testing sites in May of last year. And so when I started asking these questions, you're right. I got called a liar, told to stay in my own lane, that it was bizarre questioning. And that is disingenuous. And the governor then, when asked about it, deflected the question and gave it over to his emergency management director. I'm sorry, you're governor of the state of Florida. It is the buck stops with you. Every one of those individuals that are up at the podium, you are responsible for. And the fact that you would not take ownership of this situation and show leadership and pass it off to a secretary or to a bureaucrat shows me that you are not ready to lead our state and nonetheless, run for president.
We're speaking with Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried. She's the only statewide elected Democrat in Florida, one of the Democrats running for the nomination for Florida governor. The other names in that race, Charlie Crist and Annette Taddeo. Folks, who will get your vote for governor? Who do you support? What are your questions for Nikki Fried? We'll go to your calls in a moment. It's 549-2937. Okay, so you talked a lot about what you see as the governor's failures to respond to this public health crisis. What's your message, though, to voters who like his management of this and other aspects of life in Florida? They say they like the lack of lockdowns. They like the fact that kids are in school, and compare it to other big states like, for example, New York or California. To win in this closely divided state, you've got to appeal to some of those voters. What's your message to them?
My message to them is this. There is other ways to lead. I have not said that we need to lock down the state. I've said very clearly that that is not the case, that we have billions of dollars that are sitting in the governor's office that should have been distributed to our schools throughout the last year, that should have gone in to help with increasing the ventilation systems, making sure that there was more sanitation stations inside of the schools, making sure that we had teachers, because we know that a lot of our we right now have a huge vacancy in our teachers. We are using substitute teachers. They're getting sick now. And so making sure we're actually using those dollars to go to our public education system. And so what I tell the people of our state is that there is another way to lead. And that doesn't mean locking down, because that is not the right answer either. But it's making sure that we're utilizing these resources to keep our families safe, to make sure that our economy stays vibrant, and making sure that people feel that they have a governor who is trying to do what's in the best interest. Mm-hmm. And I'm very concerned about what the governor did when it comes to the business community. The business community are the ones who, and the local governments are the ones who stepped up to the plate, making sure that their customers and their employees were safe. And this governor went out of his way to tell businesses, not only can you not mandate anything, but you also can't control your own employees and your own corporate and your own business. If you're a small business owner who might have an underlying condition, and now you're being told that you can't even ask your employees to get vaccinated, that whatever happened to free market, whatever happened to us trusting our local businesses to doing what is right for their employees and doing right for the community. And so I say, look, it's not an all or nothing approach. It's bringing people together, finding the right solutions, and listening to both sides of the arguments. And that is not what this governor has done. He has listened to a very small but very vocal crowd.
We're speaking with Nikki Fried, Agriculture Commissioner, candidate for governor. Let's go to your calls, 549-2937. Guy in Ponte Vedra. Hey, Guy. Good morning.
Good morning. I was unfortunately displeased when my wife asked me, who works at a provider in one of the hospitals here, and my daughter is an ER nurse, that the governor was actually on vacation in Mexico during part of the time we didn't hear anything. Is that true or is that fiction?
I haven't heard that, Guy. No, but Nikki Fried.
Well, first of all, Guy, thank you for calling in this morning. I have not heard that either. I certainly know that when I questioned where the governor was for those couple of weeks, the governor's staff gave us about 5 different answers, from everything from having some downtime to being in the office to actually posting pictures that were older than they were saying on that day. So they changed their story about 5 or 6 times during those couple of weeks. But unfortunately, that is not one of those rumors that I had heard either.
5492937. Janice on the South Side. Hi, Janice. You're on the air.
Hi. Yeah. The governor and the mayor both should have used those extra doses that they just threw away and used them as free booster doses. They should not have just disposed of them.
Well, these were test kits, not shots that we're talking about, Janice.
There were, yesterday on the news, there were many, many vaccinations in the state of Florida that were disposed of because they were not used.
Okay.
And that's ridiculous.
I hadn't heard that, but thanks for that. Nikki Fried?
Yeah, I have not, Janice, I had not heard of that either, but certainly we can take a look at it to make sure, because again, we want to make sure that everybody who wants a vaccine has access to them in an efficient way.
Yeah, I mean, you can get it. Let's be clear. The test kit issue is one thing, but unless I see evidence to the contrary, you can get a vaccine anywhere you go in this state. The problem is not enough people are getting them. We're at about, 63% of the state, roughly comparable to America, is vaccinated. Not enough Floridians have gone out and gotten vaccinated. And so as governor, you would have made a different choice on touting the benefits of vaccination, I assume. Let's be clear, though, the governor did push for vaccinations early in this pandemic and then backed off that later on.
Yeah, he absolutely, at the very beginning, it was seniors first and made sure that seniors were being vaccinated. Then he sold off the vaccines, and there was lots of pop-up locations across the state that were in very affluent communities. And then putting it into Publixes. And as your ag commissioner, I know that we have food deserts all over our state, that people don't have access to Publixes. And that was one of my greatest concerns of the rollout plan, was the fact that there were so many disadvantaged communities that were not getting access to the vaccines. And I had deployed, please, Governor, open up these pop-up sites in our minority communities and our farming communities and our agriculture areas. And unfortunately, that wasn't a priority. And then once the seniors and his donors were vaccinated, he stopped talking about it. And now you saw on Fox News, when he was even asked about his own vaccination and his boosters, he didn't answer the question.
You're triple vaxxed, I assume?
Absolutely. Did all of it in public.
What's your message to Floridians who don't like the idea of a mandate when it comes to vaccines, and they might see you as too liberal for their taste?
I've been also very clear. I do not agree with mandates, and I do not agree with bans. This is where my position is different from both DeSantis and the Biden administration. I'm very clear on I agree with personal choice, but it's important for government to give out the correct information and to be supportive of our healthcare and supportive of our industries out there that are pushing. And so it would have been my job as governor to go around to our state to show up in these communities and pushing it and talking to local leaders and talking to spiritual leaders that people may listen to and trying to encourage people to get the vaccines.
Mm-hmm. Tabby in Jacksonville. Hello, Tabby. How are you? Go ahead. Tabby, you're on the air. Oh, we've lost that caller. She's got the radio on. So you know what, folks? Turn your radio down so that we can get you on quickly. The lines are jammed. While we get the next person in the queue, here's a question for you out of many that we have on Twitter. Your possible chief opponent for the Democratic nomination, there are 2, Charlie Crist and Annette Taddeo, all vying with Nikki Fried for the Democratic nomination for governor. This week, Charlie Crist said he supports the legalization of marijuana, the full legalization of marijuana in Florida. You, of course, ran for agriculture commissioner on a campaign of water and weed, talking about those important products for the state. So do you support full marijuana legalization? The Twitterverse wants to know.
Absolutely. This is something that I talk about all the time. So, Charlie, welcome to the party. This is something that I have been supportive of for a very, very long time for lots of reasons. One, economic opportunity. The amount of taxable revenue that we are losing out in our state is in the billions. That's jobs. That's opportunity to put money into affordable housing, to put money into education. It's also an opportunity for criminal justice reform. People, all Black and brown people all over our state and all over our country are still being arrested for marijuana offenses. Well, white men are making millions upon millions of dollars, the same exact activities. So it's a decrease of costs for our public defenders, our state attorneys, our police, our jails, our courthouses. And then, of course, is also a healthcare reform that allowing people an opportunity to have a more natural product instead of pharmaceutical drugs. This is a win-win-win for our state. I have policy initiatives, and this is something that I plan on doing my first legislative session as governor.
Tom on the West Side. Hi, Tom.
Good morning. Like I said, what concerns me the most about this governor is the way that he seeks to continually wrest power from local government and from business leaders to take away their decision-making ability. That and the fact that he seems to make statements that just fly in the face of facts. Just a very troubling way of leading a state.
Let's talk about home rule. That's typically a pretty conservative value, and it's one that we've seen, honestly, decimated in recent years in Florida. How would you change that concept? Because what we've seen in recent years in Florida is the governor's mansion and the legislature preempting, overriding the wishes of cities around the state, whether it comes to public health or other matters.
Yep, and that's a problem. And which is the ironic aspect. I always talk about this. My dad is a diehard Republican. My mom is a diehard Democrat. I was brought up in a household to listen to both sides. But what my dad always used to talk to me about the Republican Party is about less taxes, less spending, home rule, free market. And unfortunately, this radical right that's happened in Tallahassee has taken away all of that. And so I am a huge supporter of home rule. I've talked to so many of our local mayors and county and city commissioners in the last few years talking about all these issues, especially COVID. And unfortunately, this governor has still to this day has not held a all hands on deck call with our counties, our mayors across our state. I've had to do that because he hasn't. And listening to the concerns. And when we have these calls, the people that come on are not just Democrats. It's small mayors, and it's people that are just wanting somebody to listen to them about the concerns that are happening at the local level. I'm a huge supporter of local control. That's where people know their elected officials locally. They know how to get in touch with them. They know how to change local laws and to work with their local officials. And so it is imperative that we make sure that government, that the people know who their government is, and that's the ones that are local and closest to them.
Jammed lines for Nikki Fried on the show this morning. Jason in San Marco. Jason, go ahead.
Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Nikki. Nikki, I'm a Democrat, so whoever gets this nomination is going to get my vote. I wanted to say and ask you two questions. Number one, I'm hoping and I'm believing you are most likely a pro-choice individual, and I'm hoping you can find a big strategy to use that to your advantage in this state where I don't think the women want to give up their right to privacy. And the other thing I wanted to suggest, and I'll take all your comments off the air, is that I hope you will have the courage to go into the lion's den, into these Republican strongholds around the state, to get your media people to get you on Fox News, because I believe that there's a lot of Republican women who would find you as a very attractive candidate, and you got to get a chunk of that to win, or you must capture part of that electorate. I think they would find you very attractive, and I'm wishing you all the very best.
Jason, thanks. Let's talk about the abortion issue. Florida is a different state than Texas or Mississippi in terms of abortion politics. It's a closely divided state, and bipartisan majorities, including, as he mentioned, Republican women, are pro-choice. Will you leverage that issue in your campaign to appeal to women of all political backgrounds?
First and foremost, I'm saddened that I'd have to do that. That we are having this conversation 70 years later after Roe v. Wade.
Let's be clear. It is likely this will pass the legislature and be signed by the governor, restricting abortion to 15 weeks of pregnancy, just in case folks aren't aware of this.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And I have had very strong statements, not just now, but throughout my entire career, of my support for choice. And it's a woman's right to privacy. That is a fundamental in our Constitution, has been upheld by Roe v. Wade. And it is so disingenuous and so absurd that this legislature and this governor dares come into this session and divide our state once again on an issue that has been resolved. I mean, the stories that I used to hear from my grandparents and my grandmothers about what used to happen of, abortions in back alleys and hangers and having to go to other countries to get abortions. This is a healthcare right. And so I will be strong. I have been strong. You should see my comments, my statements, and my video interviews on this issue. And it's unfortunate that I will have to use this to bring out the bases and to make sure that women understand that I'm going to consistently support a woman's right to choose. It is a freedom to decide what is right for her own body, a conversation between her doctor, her significant others, her family members, and her spiritual leaders. This is not a conversation for government.
Hal in Arlington. Hi, Hal. Thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Good morning. I appreciate you taking my call. I was a Republican. I'm 73 years old. Was a Republican all of my adult life until Trump ran for president, and then I switched my party affiliation. My question this morning relates to Governor DeSantis. Back when they first started shutting everything down because of COVID, DeSantis left the hotels open, yet he shut down vacation rentals. And I couldn't understand that because obviously hotels provide much greater exposure to an individual than a private home that someone is renting. And I couldn't help but wonder if perhaps he was somehow tied to the hotel industry financially, and I just wondered if there's anything known about that.
I don't know that there's any direct tie, although certainly the hospitality industry does donate to campaigns on both sides of the political aisle. I don't know that there's anything nefarious tied to that decision, though. I mean, let's be clear. I haven't seen any evidence of that.
Right. And Hal, first of all, thank you for your call again this morning. And let's also be very clear. Ron DeSantis closed down our state. As he talks about freedom and what other lockdowns, he was the one who actually locked down the state. And the opening, I had some concerns with because he was picking winners and losers of which was going to open when and how. Look, he opened up WWE here in Jacksonville and had that when other different type of venues were closed.
To play devil's advocate, didn't a lot of governors make decisions on the fly in this once in a generation situation that in hindsight you might have said, well, maybe that was a mistake?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. And I had actually called on him to close down the state earlier because I fundamentally believe that if we had closed down the state earlier, we could have opened it back up earlier, could have saved some lives, maybe have lessened the burden on our hospitals. Of course, this is something which has been my concern on his leadership on this issue, is that nobody had the right answers all the time, that none of us have been in a situation where we knew what was coming. We were listening to health experts. No one understood really what was in front of them. But that was when it should have been time to bring everybody to the table, to have conversations, to listen to all sides and make a decision together. We all know that he cut me out of all those conversations, didn't listen from any other perspective.
You brought that up a lot. You're a member of the Florida cabinet. Is the cabinet meeting regularly? Are you meeting with this governor and the other cabinet officials regularly? What's the status of that?
No, he consistently cancels our cabinet meetings because he doesn't want to deal with me, doesn't want to be in the same room. When
was the last cabinet meeting?
Last cabinet meeting probably was, I want to say maybe September, October.
Virtual?
No, it was in person.
Okay. And how often is the cabinet supposed to meet?
The cabinet used to meet about every other month. Give or take. And so there's typically a calendar of meetings. He canceled a lot during COVID. My other concern, not only on canceling cabinet meetings, is he's canceling clemency meetings, which typically happen the day after. Those are individuals who are trying to get their rights back. These lists are tremendously long. We've made some changes, but these people have been waiting sometimes 10 years to get in front of us. And for no reason whatsoever cancels these meetings. And I have a huge problem with that when we're trying to do our jobs.
What rationale is given?
None.
All right. Kendra in Mandarin has been holding. Kendra, go ahead.
Good morning, ladies. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate Nikki Fried on her campaign and say that a woman's place is in the governor's mansion. Secondly, I'd like to say that I'd like to thank you, Nikki, for being a voice for choice. I, too, am proud to be a voice for choice. And thirdly, going back to Governor DeSantis and the pandemic, Melissa, I wanted to point out a correction. This is not once in a generation. This is once in a century. So, Nikki, with all due respect, I understand that you don't like mandates. Most of us don't want to be told what to do. But this is different than any other situation we have ever been in. And due to the severity of the situation, I feel that it is actually incumbent upon all politicians to require and enforce mask mandates and vaccinations and vaccination passports. Having said that, did Ron DeSantis do the right thing for Florida? No, he did not. He actually sells fundraising merchandise on his website, Friends of Ron DeSantis, and the tagline is, "How can I drink a beer with a damn mask on my face?" Thank you.
Okay, Kendra. All right, so clearly she's a fan. Let me ask you, though, Nikki Fried, before the general election against Governor DeSantis, first, there's going to be a primary. What's your message to Democrats out there who will be choosing between you, Charlie Crist, Annette Taddeo, the three most visible candidates on the ballot?
This should be an easy choice for Democrats. We need something new in our state. We have lost for 25 straight years, and that includes Charlie as a Republican. 25 straight years, Democrats haven't had the seat of the governor's office. And we need somebody who not only can win our state, which is what I did in 2018, and talking to one of your listeners earlier, I will be going into all parts of our state. My first commercials in 2018 were in Fort Myers and out in Lee County, the reddest of red of our state. And so we need somebody who is going to not only know how to win, be able to fight all across our state. I have been in the arena with DeSantis from day one. There's nobody that gets under his skin like I do. Whenever we are in cabinet meetings, that whenever I start to talk, he twitches. I have a track record of the last not only 3 years as Commissioner of Agriculture, but as a past public defender, as a fighter for homeowners during the foreclosure crisis, fighting for the expansion of medical marijuana, our children, the foster care system. Democrats need a fighter, need somebody who is going to be thinking outside the box, able to bring people together, knows how to win, and has been a consistent Democrat for my entire life and have born and raised here in Florida. Democrats want to win. And we want to win with somebody who knows how to fight, who has a track record, and can get into this arena and make sure that we are putting our best foot forward.
Nikki Fried, thanks for joining the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa, for having me here today. And it's great to be back in Jacksonville.
Much more still ahead later. UNF marks a milestone, its golden anniversary. We'll find out what's on tap, but up next.
I think the pandemic had a lot to do with how real estate has really gone crazy in good, in some ways bad as well.
Jacksonville's super hot real estate market and when it might cool off. That's after this. Welcome back. Real estate sales continue to be off the chain right now in Florida. Jacksonville, in fact, is ranked as one of the hottest markets in the country. Is that going to change, though? Well, we've got to look at what we can expect through this year. I spoke with Jacksonville realtor Tracy Collins. So, Tracy Collins, let me begin by congratulating you. You are Jacksonville's Watson Realty's Rising Star of 2020. You have already made an impact in the real estate world, so you know more than anyone how crazy the market is here in town, right?
And I came in during the pandemic.
Mhm.
So when everything was shut down, people probably thought, well, that seems like a weird time to start a career. But I think the pandemic had a lot to do with how real estate has really gone crazy in good, in some ways bad as well.
Yeah, there are good and bad points to this. Zillow lists Jacksonville, Florida as number 2 in its list of the hottest real estate markets in America, just behind Tampa. So that's great news if you're trying to sell your house in Jacksonville, not so great if you're trying to buy. What are you seeing out there?
That's right. Well, I feel like possibly too many people were yelling Duval, and they all came running like a siren to the River City. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of people who are selling their homes in other states, which have traditionally sold their properties at higher values. They're coming to settle in Jacksonville because, it's easier here. And but the good news is we've got a lot of people retiring who are downsizing. So that's wonderful because people, come here and never leave. I'm one of them. And then you've got the millennials who are right in their prime for buying. And so you're seeing a nice balance of that. The unfortunate part is that we only have 2,600 homes on the market, where traditionally my broker shared with me before the pandemic was 14,000 homes on the market. So
that's a huge drop. Yeah, there's just not enough inventory out there. So how do you see the market shaking out through the year? It's predicted that home prices in Jacksonville will continue to go up through the year, home values, and then level off, right?
Yes, and so, that's wonderful, like you said, for the person selling their home. I see the other side of it, too. I'm a veteran, so I work with a lot of people in the Navy trying to get VA loans and, competing with people with conventional loans and that type of thing. You see a lot of cash buyers coming into the area. There's just a lot of competition, and now more than ever, you want to make sure you're with a real estate agent, a realtor who knows what they're doing, because you talk to any person of integrity in this industry and you'll find there are some people out there who they're just collecting a paycheck. They're just sticking a sign in your front yard and not doing any more. This is the time when the Watson standard should be the standard across the board, with the integrity and the commitment to the client, and just whether that's a buyer or a seller, and it's tough. It's tough out there on the buyer side, but if you're with an educated person, then there are so many. It's like many, many roads lead to Rome, as they say. Correct? So. Many, many roads lead to turning the key in that door of your new home. And so, it's a great time to sell. It's also a great time to buy before prices get any higher. And who would have known that the prices would have, gone as high as they are? Unfortunately, for some folks, that is
that's pricing them out. That pricing them out of some homes. Yeah.
Yes.
So what's your advice then to people who want to get into a house, but they go on the day that they're listed and above asking price sometimes in this market?
So my personal advice, and I come from a family, my dad put a hammer in my hand in the 5th grade. And so I come from a family of fixer-uppers, and now gratefully those renovation loans are back. So if you can, put it in your heart to say, hey, I'm going to buy a fixer-upper, I'm going to get a renovation loan, I'm going to make this house my own. It's going to be a little uncomfortable for a while I'm doing that. Going to be under construction. I would give yourself just realistically 6 months to get everything completed. But it can be done. And at the end of it, you have a home that already has equity.
Has equity. On the other side, if you're a home seller, you say there are 4 main areas a home seller should focus their funds in preparation to sell. What are those 4 areas?
So if you're selling and you have it on the market and there's something wrong in these 4 areas, you're going to have to deal with it anyway, which stalls the closing date. So deal with them ahead of time, and that has to do with your roof, your HVAC, your electric, and your plumbing. And I'll just say that as a bare minimum, and the advice is to talk to your realtor about what could pass an inspection versus what will definitely hit that 4-point inspection that these people can't get insurance on the home because of. Take care of those ahead of time.
Smart. She's Tracy Collins, a rising star at Watson Realty. Tracy.com, as she's also known. Thanks for the real estate tips, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Melissa.
Well, January is National Blood Donor Month, but many blood centers around the nation are facing blood shortages. In fact, the American Red Cross says America is facing its worst blood shortage in more than 10 years. It's due to the pandemic, no surprise. Well, how can you help? Right now, let's speak with Angie Bird. She is Life South's District Director for Northeast Florida. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Melissa. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Good to talk to you, and congrats on a new partnership. Life South Blood Centers is joining the partners of the Blood Emergency Readiness Corps. That's a national coalition on standby to provide urgent blood supply around the country. That's important considering that we are facing a critical blood shortage. Can you tell us how serious is the situation right now?
So the situation right now is definitely serious. Like you were saying, they've put out national blood shortage. It's the worst that we've seen in years. It's due to the outbreak, people staying home, people staying home from work and businesses closing down and everything. But mainly it's canceled numerous blood drives. Many of our partners who host high collecting blood drives have had to cancel recently. It makes it very difficult for us to adequately supply our hospitals. And then, like many others, staffing at the blood center has also been compromised, resulting in less opportunities to collect blood due to temporary closures and cancellations.
Yeah, I mean, doctors are having to make difficult decisions in hospitals right now about who, for example, is going to get a blood transfusion. We certainly don't want any more of that. So with this national call to donate blood that is going out this week, how can people answer the call, Angie? Tell us how they can donate blood and also some goodies that you're offering to get people to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the most important thing, is to remember that we're all in this together and that giving blood supports local health while we're facing a crisis within our nation. Life South serves about 70% of the hospital beds here in Northeast Florida, so all the blood donations that come in here, they actually stay here, and a single blood donation can save up to 3 lives. So January is National Blood Donor Month, as you mentioned, and we're offering $20 gift cards as a thank you gift for generous donors today until all the way through Monday. And then through the end of the month, we'll also be offering $10 gift cards to everybody. And then other than that, I guess just if you're a business, you run a business, you work at a business, and you're still open, consider hosting a blood drive because we need to get the bus out there, multiple buses out there every day to collect blood to supply our hospitals.
That's right. You will come to the business, set up out front, and people in the company can come out and do their bit. Now, how can business owners and the average blood donating citizen out there, how can they get in touch with you guys at Life South and donate some blood this month?
They can contact us directly here at our Jacksonville branch. We also have a region down in Putnam County, if that's closer to you. And then we can set up a blood drive. They could also go onto lifesouth.org and they can email our general email, and I'll get that email as well, and we can get a blood drive set up. And then for donors who are interested in donating, lifesouth.org again, and you can find all of our blood drives and our donation centers across Jacksonville.
Lifesouth.org. And haven't some restrictions even been lifted on who's eligible to donate? Can you talk about that quickly?
There has been some travel restrictions and some restrictions for people over in Europe. A lot of people were past deferred, especially military personnel. And some of those restrictions have been lifted, except for very specific certain areas. So a lot of people who were deferred before to donate blood, they might be eligible to donate blood now.
Okay. And what's your final message then to people who they just are hesitant to donate blood? They don't like needles. Maybe they're afraid that giving blood will make them feel bad. What do you say to those folks?
So we do everything that we can to make sure that you have a good experience and you're not feeling bad. We will get you snacks and make sure that all your levels stay. So I would just say and try to remind people that it's not about the needle, it's about the need. That is one of our sayings around here. And 1 in 3 people who go into the hospital are going to need blood. So it is so important for people who are eligible to donate blood to donate, because you never know. You might need it one day, or a family member, or a child, or, a good friend. You just never know when the need's going to be there. And it's important for us to have an adequate supply for our hospitals.
Check it out, folks, at lifesouth.org. There is a critical blood shortage right now, and it's January, National Blood Donor Month. So donate when you can. Angie Bird, District Director at LifeSouth. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa.
And look for that Bloodmobile bus somewhere near you. Up next, it's the golden milestone as UNF celebrates 50 years in Jacksonville. We'll find out how they're marking the occasion right after this.
Congaree and Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
Jacksonville University's Linda Berry Stein College of Fine Arts celebrates its 60th anniversary with internationally renowned mezzo-soprano Jamie Barton and composer Jake Heggie. Live Sunday, April 10th. More info at ju.edu/Stein College.
On the next Fresh Air, a disturbing story of civilian deaths in the battle against ISIS. Our guest will be New York Times correspondent David Phillips, who reports on a secret unit in the U.S. military that picked targets for airstrikes, circumventing rules to protect non-combatants, and often killing farmers in their fields and families trying to flee combat. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Tanya Mosley. Did you take a rapid home COVID test before gathering with family over the holidays? Well, a new study raises questions about whether those tests can detect the Omicron variant in the early days of the infection. That means it might be possible to pass on COVID even after you've tested negative. Next time on Here and Now.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
In the 90s, President Clinton gave states more autonomy over how they could use federal funding to aid the poor.
Today we are taking an historic chance to make welfare what it was meant to be, a second chance, not a way of life.
But 25 years later, billions of dollars remain unspent, money that's meant to act as a safety net. We'll find out why next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, this year, UNF is celebrating its golden anniversary. That's right, the school first opened its doors back in 1972. I spoke with interim president Pam Challey about UNF's 50th anniversary and a look ahead to the next 50 years. Take a listen. I think it's taking some by surprise. 50 years of the University of North Florida, which began in this community way back in 1972. Lots planned to celebrate the golden anniversary, correct?
Lots planned throughout the entire year, starting with some of our favorite basketball games to special lectures to concerts and rehearsals and all kinds of exciting things that we hope will not only intrigue students but also be special for the community.
Now, the community was a very different one in 1972 when UNF opened to students. So as you mark this milestone, let's talk about that for a minute, how UNF's creation really changed Jacksonville significantly.
Yeah, I would think so too. You know, I haven't been here the entire 50 years, but I've been here about half of it. Mm-hmm. But in preparation for this, I certainly have looked into the history of UNF, and my understanding is that very early on there were a number of people who weren't very happy about starting a university in this part of Jacksonville between downtown and the beach. But I'm so glad to say that eventually I think we were able to win them over. But the other thing is that the population was so much smaller back then. Mm-hmm. And when they talk about what the land was like where UNF currently is, people talk about wildlife, including even wild hogs that roamed.
Really?
Wild hogs, alligators, of course, tortoises. I mean, it was kind of a sanctuary for a lot of animals out here.
Yeah,
but
there was no development at all around that in that part of town back then, except the university, right?
Absolutely, there was none. There was none. We started with 2,027 students, which I think is a pretty good number for starting a new university. They were mainly junior and seniors. We didn't add freshmen and sophomores for quite a few years later. We also had a small number of graduate students at that point. And now we've grown to over 17,000 students. And in the course of those 17,000, we have 6 colleges, 64 bachelor's degrees, 43 master's degrees, and doctoral degrees in 3 areas. So I think we've come a pretty long way since 1972.
Certainly, and not only growing in terms of the student body, but also all of the partnerships UNF has established over the years. We're a logistics hub. You've got the Crowley Center for Transportation and Logistics. You even have a partnership with the FBI on cybersecurity, a symposium you held there, an accelerated nursing program, partnering up with Ascension St. Vincent's, and more. And so UNF has become such a vital community leader. How do you see the next 50 years of this university?
Well, I think we wouldn't be the university that we are today without our community. And I truly believe that anybody that comes to UNF in a leadership position needs to be extremely thankful and appreciative for all that the community offers to our university and also our students. So I think that's one thing that's incredibly important. I think another thing that we're really going to have to grapple with a little bit is how much of our instruction is going to be online and how much of it is going to be face-to-face. Now, this has nothing to do with COVID or anything like that. We're talking 50 years down the road here. But we learned through COVID that we can do a lot of things remotely that we weren't so sure we could do. And that really meets the needs of a certain segment of the population. So we're going to have to grapple with this. There's nothing I love better, honestly, Melissa, than standing in front of a class and being able to be sure I have engaged my students. But I have to also realize that not all of them are really all that excited about having to drive to campus every day. Some of the other things that I think we're going to be thinking about a lot is technology in the broad sense and the importance of STEM, computing, engineering, certainly medicine, and then how that integrates and really builds on the humanities. There's a real push right now, of course, in our community for STEM, students who are educated in STEM, and such a big push and need for students that have healthcare backgrounds. So you will see us growing in those programs more and more.
Well, in the meantime, enjoy the milestone as UNF marks its 50th anniversary in Jacksonville. Dr. Pam Challey is interim president at UNF. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for listening, everyone. I'm Melissa Ross. Also to hear today, Heather Schatz, Josh Torres, Catherine Hobbs, Jessica Palumbo, Randy Roguski, the entire WJCT News team. We'll be right back here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow for our Friday Media Roundtable. Have a great day.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
North Florida